And tonight, we're going to be talking about camping hacks. And I hope that a lot of you brought or prepared to talk about your favorite camping tips and hacks. You know, we've done this before, and normally we've done it at Como and been able to talk and sometimes even demonstrate some things. So it'll be a little bit different doing it this way. I'll start by saying a few things, and then I'm going to ask people to throw out their favorite kinds of stuff. So there are all different kinds of trips, and what kinds of stuff you bring is going to depend on the trip that you're on, and what kinds of things you'll need will depend on the trip that you're on and what kind of trip it is. You know, if you're car camping, things are pretty easy. You can bring a lot of stuff. It's pretty easy to go get more stuff unless you're in a super remote place. And so that's pretty easy. It becomes more complicated if you're paddling and you're a few portages in the boundary waters, or if you're kayaking and on an island on Lake Superior or out in an island in Voyageurs National Park. It's different if you're backpacking and, you know, maybe 20 or 30 miles from where you might be able to get stuff or get help. We have people in the Rovers who bike camp, and the nature of planning for these things and the stuff that you need and the kind of tips that are going to be helpful are going to vary a little bit depending on what kinds of trips you're on. But we all do trips, and there are some similarities. So when you think about things, you think about general camping hacks and tips, ways to use gear in multiple ways to have little things. One of the things that I do, so I started out trying to manage medications on trips and buying these little bitty medication things at Walgreens to help keep them dry on kayak trips. And then I found that these little bitty Ziplocs that are pretty substantial and often can be reused and can carry all kinds of things. I use these to carry spices for cooking. I use them to carry things like, these are those little bread things, okay, that hold the end of your bag with a loaf of bread. And these make awesome, really lightweight clothespins to hang clothes on. And you can put a whole bunch of them in a little baggie like this. So these are some of the kinds of things to think about. What are creative and multiple ways to use things that you maybe haven't thought about before? What are creative ways to get by if you suddenly find that you run out of something, or your equipment fails, or, you know, suddenly your lighter is dead and you're trying to start a fire, or you don't have any good kindling around? What can you do, and what can you have that can serve multiple kinds of functions? Also, you know, sometimes you may have a favorite piece of gear that serves a lot of really good functions. Probably 15 years ago, for about $8, $9, I bought this tarp. It's kind of big and bulky depending on the kind of camping that you're doing, but I bought it at REI, and it goes in my kayak on all kinds of trips and serves multiple kinds of functions. I don't usually hang it overhead, but it's often used as a picnic thing. It can be a space blanket. It can be all kinds of things. It's got grommets in the side, and it's one of these multifunctional pieces of gear that cost next to nothing that I use for a lot of stuff. So you may have a favorite kind of piece of gear or something that you don't want to go on a trip without. You may have particular kinds of things that you think about when you're prepping for a trip. I was talking to friends yesterday about this topic, and they talked about situations where they hadn't checked their stove before trip, and they had loose connections that were problematic. And in one case, they were talking about a jet boil O-ring. And one of my friends said, you know, if you need a jet boil O-ring, you can pay $25 at MSR, or you can go to Ace Hardware and buy the same thing for $8. So these are some of the kinds of things to think about. Another kind of area where people might have tips is how they organize stuff for a trip. And that's going to be different depending on whether you're packing a kayak or packing Duluth packs for a canoe trip, or whether you're packing a bike for a bike trip, or whether you're packing a backpack. So all of these things are things to consider. And then the last thing is, what kind of emergency stuff you need to have that you may not use every trip, or what stuff can be employed in emergency. So these are areas that I kind of thought about as tips. And now I'm going to kind of open things up so that people can offer some of their favorite kinds of tips. I think, let's see, we have 38 people. Maybe the best way to do this is just to have people say things that they want to talk.
So this is Melissa, and I have 2 things from a raft trip I did last year. So I was gone for 2 weeks, and I used those mesh bags that you can wash lingerie and stuff in. And I had a mesh bag for underwear. I had a mesh bag for socks. They were really nice for helping me organize my dry bag. And they gave us a big, like 65-liter dry bag. And the mesh bags helped with organization. And then one of the women that was on the trip with me, she has Asian background, and she was using, I don't know the right term, but for lack of a better word, like if you take a big dish towel and make, tie it like you're going to run away from home and put it over a stick. So she bundles her stuff in those things, like, day gear is in one, day clothing is in one bundle, for lack of a better word. She organized like underwear in a bundle, outside clothes in a bundle, and it really made working with a dry bag, so a big one like that, so much easier. So those are my two tips.
Thanks, Melissa. Those things are helpful. It's one thing when you have a giant dry bag, like in a rafting trip, or if you're a kayaker, you have a million little bitty dry bags.
Yes.
And one of the things that I found early on is that I needed to either have a color-coded system or put labels on them, or I was forever going, okay, now, where's that thing, and which dry bag is this in, and opening and closing dry bags. And so that's where organization in a system is really helpful.
Yeah.
Sue put in the chat,
what's a thermocell?
What's thermocell, Sue?
I can't. First of all, I have to give credit to Sandy Anderson, because she's the one who showed me hers. And then secondly, Josh mentioned it during one of the backpacking education sessions. And I had to go buy one because I don't like bugs. It is insect repellent thing. And it comes in different versions. This is the backpacking version, which is pretty compact, and it fits right onto a canister. That's your fuel source. It has little pads inside with the mosquito repellent on it, and each pad will last about 4 hours, and it just slides right in there. When it's like a fully charged pad, it's blue, and then when it turns white, the repellent has been used up. They come in little packets like this, and you just screw it on top. You turn it on, and then you press the little button, just like on a jet boil or something, and it starts it. And there's a teeny tiny little like pilot light that's lit, and you can see the pilot light through this little hole here to make sure it's working. And then this kind of mosquito repellent vapor engulfs a 15-foot diameter, and it super duper keeps the bugs away. They also have other versions than the backpacker one. They have like a rechargeable one or electric one, so you could plug it in and use it in your backyard. The website is thermacell.com. I got this at REI. It was, oh gosh, I forgot. I don't know. Gigi, how much did you spend on your Thermacell? I don't know, maybe $35 for this, $30. And then I got a big bundle of refills for about $30 for all these. So it'll last me a couple seasons. That's my favorite product.
Hey, Sue, this is Jane. How much fuel does that use out of your canister?
I've only used it a couple times, but it doesn't use very much. And it would be a good way to use up canisters that it's like, well, it's not really enough. I don't want to trust it for a meal or something. So you could use up like your half empty canisters or your almost empty canisters.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Joanna's on the REI website shopping right now, even as we speak. So who else has a tip or a hack? So one thing that I use for bugs is just this bug jacket, bug shirt. It's a packet like this. It's going to be bulkier, but you open it up and it comes out of it's got a pocket in front. It's a bug shirt. It's got a face covering on it, a hood and a face covering. The face covering unzips in case you want to have something to drink or eat. It's tightly woven. It attaches at the wrists. It tightens up and at the waist, and it's got vented pits. You can throw it on over whatever you're wearing. And there have been a few trips with biting black flies and stuff like that. That this has been a godsend. It would be a lot more trouble to take if you had super limited space. Kayaks have limited space, but there's a lot of places you can just stuff something that's like a packet. And so that's been a useful thing for me with the bugs. Any trip where there's likely to be bugs, that is, not Baja or the desert, but any trip in the boundary waters or voyagers during the summer and spring, I take it. So that's one of my things. Who else has stuff?
Fran, Joni up here.
Yes, hi, Joni.
I have a couple things. Let me put the cat on the floor. I don't take the cat camping. But these are, you see these? These are these children's playmat things, and you can stick them together. I do some car camping, and if I know it's been raining a lot and I'm going to be crawling in and out of my tent and bringing mud and stuff into my tent, I don't want to do that. So I will take a couple of these things along and I'll put it in your rainfly covers over an area, but it's ground.
The
So
vestibule?
I'm crawling in and out on top of this.
Oh, yeah.
Or I can take my boots off and leave them outside on this. It's waterproof. It's kind of a foam pad. So I just take a couple of these along. I also use them for kneeling when I'm rolling up my sleeping bag or rolling up my tent. Then I don't have to have sore knees. And I can just put them in my car underneath everything else. So they're really easy to take along. I just bring a couple of these along. Just keeps the mud and the dirt and the sand out of my tent. And there was something else that I do. Oh, it'll come to me later. You know how it is. But that's just one of those dumb things that I can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll jump on that bandwagon if I can.
Okay.
So I use Reflectix, which if you guys don't know, it's like the stuff that you put between your siding of your house and the siding and like the wall. But it's really lightweight, and it's you can use it as a layer underneath your sleeping bag if you want. It's kind of like bubble wrap with like silver on both sides. You can get it at Home Depot, really cheap. But I use this as my mat, my floor mat underneath my hammock, so I don't get my feet dirty. Get that in the hammock or outside my tent, and then it rolls up like nothing, and it doesn't weigh anything. But then I also made a pouch for my backpacking meals.
Oh,
So it keeps, you're soaking them, takes 20 minutes. This keeps them warm forever. And then I also did a koozie for my cup. And I've been able to keep my coffee hot for close to an hour in this. And it's just the Toaks titanium. So if you guys have this, you know that it stays hot for like 5 seconds. But this stuff is like awesome. I just duct taped it together and you can get like a roll of it for $20 at Home Depot. So it's super versatile.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Along the same lines, I used a cutout from a foam pad here. Can anybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, and I use this to, when I get out of my tent, I want to, rather than try to climb in my shoes, I stand in this for a little bit and get my shoes ready. And I could, then I climb into my shoes for my tent. Also, I can use it in a chair, camp chair, because it gives insulation in colder weather. It's just a little cutout sit pad. And then, or if I'm out backpacking, I want to sit on some rocks. It kind of takes the edge off of sitting on rocks. So I use this to sit on. And yeah, and also I can use it. If need to, I can put it down the bottom of my my air mattress, and for a little more insulation in cold weather too. Or I can even put it in my sleeping bag too if it's not dirty. So. Anyway, it's multiple purposes. I have some cutouts for even doing cold weather canoeing. If I'm out in really cool weather, I've got some cutouts that sit on the top of the canoe seats. So forth. So anyway, that's my little bit.
Yeah, that stuff is multi-purpose. When I had a dog, I had a piece that was cut for her to sleep on so that she wasn't climbing on top of my pad with me. So yeah, it's multi-purpose and it's not very expensive, and you can make it however you want it to be. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Who else?
Hey, I got something. So for me, that was for cycling trips, and I was trying to get all my rain gear. So how could I stay dry if it rained on my bike trip? And for my feet, I just gave up on the idea of trying to find anything to keep my shoes dry. And I just went with waterproof socks. So if you Google waterproof socks, then it's kind of like between 20 and $30, depending on what brand you buy or whatever. And it's basically, that is going to keep your feet super dry. So you won't get any blister or anything. But then you can just go and do some river crossing, or even if it rains a lot, you just basically give up on your shoe staying dry. Your shoe will be wet, but your feet will stay dry and you will avoid blisters.
Yeah, I always think too when I'm camping about having a pair of camp shoes that are dry and that I haven't hiked in all day or paddled in all day or whatever, something to change into that's dry too. Keeping your feet dry is really critical.
So I have one.
Okay, Sue?
All right. So this little device here is what cleans my pots.
I love that.
Friend gave it to me, and after that, I said it's at REI, like $5.20 or $5.50 for anybody who's shopping right now. It's called a GSI Outdoors Compact Scraper. It's got a little bit of rubber on it, and easy to clean. Great. I will also add, as somebody whose knees don't like to be on the ground too much, Ace has really cheap gardening knee pads. I don't have it with me right now. They're really like this, and they fit. They're a little bit rounded, so they fit around my sleeping bag in the same bag.
Oh.
So they come in handy.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. Who else?
I have another one. It's Joni again. I get really aggravated when my wool socks start to shrink up, and then the toes are not big enough for me anymore. So, but I knit. So this, can you see this? This is a sock stretcher. So if you hand knit socks, you would put it on here. So when my socks come out of the washer, I put them on here to dry, and that stretches out the toe again, so that my socks are not getting too small for me. I like the hardware brand of all wool socks, but they started to kind of felt up, and this saves my socks. So you get a pair of these from a knitting store. Oops. And see, it's just plastic. You could probably make your own form, and then you just slide the sock inside or over it. There.
Joni, I've never heard of the hardware brand of wool socks. Where do you get them?
I think it's what they're
More.
called. I got them 2 years ago at REI, and I got the extra heavy wear kind, extra pile to them,
Okay.
because I was going to do all that hiking in Ireland.
Yeah.
And if your feet hurt, you're in trouble. So
Okay.
it's been about 3 years of constantly using these socks that they started to kind of felt up like that.
Yeah. Cool.
But that's just something that somebody else hadn't really thought of, I guess. And as a knitter, I think of it. So
I thought you were going to say that you knitted extra length on the toes of your socks.
if I was that talented, I would.
But I like that's a better solution.
Yeah, if I can get it back far enough in the camera.
Yeah. That's fun.
So I like to save my socks. If they don't get holes in them, then they're just getting too small. I am going to keep them going.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Joni. Who else?
Well, if nobody's going to go, I'm going to add in a little food hack. So I don't know if this is really a hack or not a hack, or if it totally fits in tonight's thing, but I'll just go. So I found that when I go on trips like that are long backpacking trips, that I really kind of start craving crappy food, like cheesecake that I don't normally ever even eat. And I thought, well, how can I make cheesecake? So I bought this little tin thing that has a little bit of a lip, and you can use it as your plate and your, lots of things. So I found this to be a really handy size. And then I buy some no-bake cheesecake, and I can mix it up and just put it in here. And then I put it in a plastic Ziploc bag like this. And then I put rocks around it and put it into really cold stream of water. And it acts like a refrigerator. And voila, you have some cheesecake in a short time. So it's not exactly what you're looking for tonight, but that's what I had. That's the only thing I could come up with.
It's a way of getting down. It's a way of helping you get down the trail, though. A reward at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's kind of fun, little things always taste better when you're on the trail. Like I never eat that stuff at home, but somehow after hiking, for a week or something, you're just like, I could use a little treat. And so that would be it.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
You're
I think
welcome.
that's a great hack. Who else?
Okay, I got a few things, so I'll go.
Okay.
I guess if no one else is going to jump into it, I got a few items here. So this is one thing. This is more backpacking than car camping. These little plastic flasks. If you want to take wine, if you want to have wine with dinner, it's a lot better than carrying a wine bottle, because if you take a wine bottle, then the bottle is still heavy after you're done with it, whereas these things are super light. So once they're empty, you don't even notice them. So it's nice to be sitting out in the wilderness and having wine with dinner. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, my bug repellent is this, a fly swatter. I always take this sawn off fly swatter with me. So that comes in real useful if you can just whack them, because I really don't like bug spray, because it just bugs me, because it irritates my sinuses. So I use a fly swatter. This thing, I don't know where the heck I found it.
Oh,
but,
look at that.
it's a little dustpan and brush dealy thing. Because when you're camping, so there you go. When you're camping, you get all sorts of sand and other crap in the tent. And you always think, well, I'll clean it when I get home. And then you never do. And if you try to shake out the tent, stuff doesn't come out. So it's nice while you're hanging around in the camp to actually clean the tent out. And one more thing, I don't know whether this is a camping hack or a hiking hack or whatever, but this is just my favorite product I bought in the last 10 years is this, I call it a rain kilt or rain skirt, and it packs really small, but it basically is just a little wraparound that you put on over your legs. So if you got a raincoat on and the water's coming off, it doesn't go onto your pants. It goes onto this thing and it just runs off you. And the nice thing about this, it's easy to put on and take off. So if you're hiking somewhere, which happens here, but particularly in England where you get a shower and then it's sunny and then it's shower and sunny, you can just put this thing on and then take it off again when you need to. And I'm not going to unwrap it, but it goes up real small, but it just wraps around like a little skirt or kilt. So
Mary, what's the brand name?
the brand name is,
I saw a tag.
I see a tag too. Ultralight Adventure Equipment, made in the USA. Wow, that's unusual. Well, that's what I got in here. Oh, equipment, Logan, Utah. Well, there you go. I don't know. I got it at Midwest Mountaineering. So that's all I got.
Has anybody tried using the lint roller to get ticks off your pants that you can't see? That's a fun one that I just learned about.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, so I read a post and you take the lint roller and you just roll your pants and it gets like the little deer ticks and stuff that you can't see, and just keep it in your car and just roll yourself off at the end of the trail.
Does it really work?
Yeah. I mean, I pre-treat my clothes, so I typically don't see a lot of ticks, but I have friends that have tried it and they swear by it. So, I mean, especially if you're by yourself and you don't have anyone that can do tick checks for you too, you can get like the back of your neck and
so it works on your skin too.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why not. Another tip I heard for ticks when you're by yourself backpacking or whatever is you can get the little mirrors, like reflector mirrors, and you can use your cell phone selfie stick or something like that, and you can put the mirror in the selfie stick and use it kind of like a mirror to see like your back of your neck, places you can't see by yourself for tick checks. So thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, those are really good tips. Thank you.
Yeah.
On a different note, something that I found helps to keep your batteries alive, like when you're going someplace where it's cold at night, is to put them in your sleeping bag. So it just keeps them warm, and that keeps the battery life, or higher up in the morning. Also, especially if you're going to be filtering water and it's going to get below freezing, put the water filter in your sleeping bag, because then the body heat
Good
keeps
idea.
the filter from freezing. Yeah, so it doesn't break. But make sure you put the filter in something sealed so it doesn't get your sleeping bag wet.
Good suggestions, Dave.
Dave, that reminds me of the old Nalgene bottle in the sleeping bag when it's cold too. So boiling water and putting it in an Nalgene bottle and throwing that in your sleeping bag will warm you up real quick.
So another thing I think about when I'm planning a trip is, what if I have equipment breakdowns? And you probably need to plan this differently for different trips. What you're going to need for a repair kit for backpacking and what you're going to want to take is going to be different than for kayaking or for a bike thing or whatever. For kayaking, I think I take something that would be way too heavy for backpacking. But I have this repair kit, okay, and it's in an old Nalgene, and you'll notice that the outside has duct tape. That's where I have my duct tape. And inside the repair kit, actually, the last time I was at Voyageurs National Park, somebody picked up my boat by the deck lines and they pulled completely loose. And so I used this repair kit. I've got a bunch of stuff stuffed in here. So a multi-tool and water weld epoxy kind of stuff to fix stuff. and a little vice grips, and a screwdriver that fits all of the screws on my kayak. I've double checked, and extra screws and fittings that in case something happened with that. And let's see, what else do I have in here? I've got a bunch of stuff. I have a little razor blade in case I need to cut stuff. I have some electrical tape. I have some stuff in case my skag gets screwed up. I also have some tent repair stuff in there. And I stuck a couple of carabiners on there because things happen and you can always use an extra carabiner. And on this particular trip, I did a boat repair on my kayak. Oh, I also have cut from the flexible kind of cutting board things. I've cut patches that you can use and use with tape that will actually work. I've done this. I've done this as an experiment. I haven't put a hole in my boat, but that you can use it if you're on the water and manage to put a hole in your boat. Basically thinking through all of the stuff that could go wrong, all the stuff that goes wrong in the home. I have extra deck line and extra bungees, and like I say, some tent repair stuff. Now this is for kayak camping. What you might need, certainly some of the tent repair stuff, duct tape, of course, stuff to repair backpacking equipment, all of that kind of stuff for backpacking. Bike repair, people would need a different kind of bike repair kit. But those are things to think about. What kind of repair kit do you want? Are you going to need if you're out in the middle of nowhere? Because, if I'm on an island and something goes wrong with my boat, I have to fix it to be able to get home. It also makes me think about there's various ways, depending on where you are, emergency communication stuff. Because I'm a sea kayaker, I have a VHF radio that also has a weather band on it, which is nice. It's a marine radio. It's waterproof, so it doesn't matter if it gets wet. People who have these on the ocean, they wear out a lot faster. But if you're on fresh water and you keep it clean, I've had this for several years and it works pretty good. And it turns on, it starts. It was partly sunny. And it broadcasts the weather, which may or may not be an accurate forecast, as we found out today, but can be useful in terms of your trip planning. For other kinds of trips, sometimes a cell phone will be enough. Sometimes you'll need other kinds of communication equipment. And that's something to think about as you plan your trip. What will you do to get help? The other part of this is to think about is not just repair kits for your equipment, but first aid kits. And I'm not going to say a whole lot about that, except to think about and plan for it. And on the Rovers YouTube website, we have a video from last summer's presentation on what's in your first aid kit that Tom O'Neill did for us. So if you're thinking about that, that's another kind of what if emergency kinds of thing to think about. So think about how to fix yourself, how to fix your equipment, how to get help when you need it. Let's see, Matthew has put on using a Frisbee as a camp plate and a fire fan and a play toy. That's great. Who else has something?
Is he an ultimate player? Oh.
I don't know.
The Frisbee guy, is he a Frisbee golf player or an ultimate player?
I don't know.
We can move on. That's okay.
Sure. So, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and one more thing along with Barry's wine hacks. Another advantage of a sea kayak, if you're paddling on cold water, is that the bottom of the boat, if you're on Lake Superior, is going to be relatively cool. You can, I've been known to put beer cans or wine bottles up in the bow and stern of the boat. But they're not going to be very cold. Now you can put them in the water, dangle them in the water to chill them. The other thing that you can do if you don't want to haul out, leftover bottles and cans, is you can buy a box of wine. You can take the bladder thing out of the box, put it in the bottom of your boat. It'll keep the wine cool. The bladder will shrink as you drink the wine, so there'll be less of it. And that's another way to do that.
So are you saying you're drinking and driving?
No, I'm saying at the end of the day, I'm having wine with supper around the campfire. Matthew says he's an old Eagle Scout. And apparently he's an Eagle Scout. He used Frisbees.
So Fran, this is Jane. I've got a couple of just dumb little hacks that doesn't cost anybody anything.
Okay.
And I did just see in the chat that yes, platypus makes a small, about so big, that gets flat as you drink it down. But two things. For food, I like to bring eggs. And I don't want to bring a dozen eggs, so I don't want one of those plastic things. And egg cartons are fairly reinforced.
Yeah.
And so I cut the edges off of both edges. So I have two of them nested together, and then two tops, and they just fit right together. And then I masking tape them and stick them in my beer canister. And you can keep eggs out of the refrigerator for quite a while. I've got a friend that goes 6 days. I don't ever go that long because I'm afraid of the bouncing around in my beer canister as the food gets lower and lower. So I usually try to eat them in the first 2 or 3 days because I don't want them to break inside my canister. But these little things weigh nothing. You can always put this in the fire when you're done and leave them behind because you can always make new ones. And, if you're buying eggs, it doesn't cost you anything. So, so if you like to have some kind of egg that's not powdered, you can do that. The other hack that I have that, again, won't cost you anything, for my hammock, for the hammock person out there and anybody else who's doing a hammock, there can be an issue with rain dripping down the line and underneath the tarp that goes over your hammock. And I learned on the hammock forum to, I took an old pillowcase and cut, about a 10-inch strip, maybe an inch wide. And I tie that just underneath the tarp so that any water that comes down the line will hit that. It's cotton, gets absorbed, and then it drips straight down onto the ground rather than to continue on the next foot into the top part of my hammock. So I've never gotten wet in the rain, not just from the tarp, but from any water coming down the line has kept me dry as well. And, that weighs nothing. It's simple. You can take some old sheet. You could probably take a pair of underwear, anything cotton, just to cut a couple of strips and tie it on both sides of your line to keep any water from running down. And in the morning, it's dripping and it's dripping straight down, and I just wring it out, and I don't pack it with the tent or the hammock. Just, it'll dry in no time, and tie it right up again then the next night, and works great. And it doesn't cost you anything.
Great ideas.
Good idea. Thanks, Jane.
Yep.
Hi, this is Rose. I was on Isle Royale a few weeks ago, and I have a Thermarest Uberlight air mattress, and we were on some pretty rocky sites, and I anticipated that, and so I got polycro and cut it to make an inside footprint for my tent, because then I could shake it out and get rid of all the dirt easily. And that's just the window covering, the window insulation material. and there's a few different thicknesses, and I got kind of a medium one. And then one of my camping mates, her tent got completely saturated because we were on rocky sites and the tent stakes didn't always stay in place. And she just had a big soupy mess. So I gave her my polycro, and she was happy because she was able to sleep in her tent the next night.
Mhm.
So
Now, we've done the same with using a tarp. Is there an advantage to using window stuff?
it's super lightweight and it's pretty durable. So it's super lightweight and it dries off really quickly. It doesn't absorb anything.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
mhm.
Thanks, Rose. Along those lines, when you're planning your trip, you want to think about where you're going to be camping, because sometimes sometimes a hammock might be a great thing for people who like those. Sometimes you won't have the trees to do a hammock. Sometimes where you are, stakes won't work very well, and you may want to figure out other things. I've tied, tent corners to rocks. I also in Baja, we were camping on beaches. And when we were camping on beaches, the stakes wouldn't stay in very well. They'd just come right out of the sand. And there are some sand stakes for that. And they're also, the outfitter that we were working with had these things where you tie it to the stake, you have a line, and then you have a piece of wood about this big that you bury in the sand that's not going to pull out when it's real windy. And so when you think about, and when you're planning your trip, think about what kind of terrain it is, if you're going to have a tent, if you're going to have a hammock, what you'll need to keep it in place. That's something else that's useful to think about. So if you're camping on rocks, or if you're camping on, and those are useful things to think about in your planning phases.
You're right, Fran. When we were camping, we were stuck in these tiny little sites sometimes, and our stakes were falling out all over, and we were next to each other. And boy, it would have been nice to have had a better plan.
Yeah.
I have a couple of ideas.
Hey, Pat.
Hey. Yeah, I'm here. So I have had a number of bug jackets in my lifetime, or bug coats. And what I've decided is you get the biggest one you can find, because you can zip it up. This is like the maximum bug safety, right? You can zip it up and you can put it where you can see. You can zip it down a little bit to shove some food or water in, zip it back up again. Also, it has something to do with the hands. So this one, I don't know if you can see this, but this one has a rubber band on it, so I can use my hand to do whatever I want in the bug jacket. This one has a glove on it, so I usually put a rubber band. I usually put a rubber band around the bottom of it, so that I can use a glove for really fine things, and I'm not getting a bunch of bugs. So those are two different ideas. And if you get it super big, you can use your hand however you want inside of it. And it also goes so long, where you can't see, but it goes down to the middle of my thigh. So, and it's got some like elastic around the bottom of it. So that's one thing I wanted to show you. The other thing is I always have gloves around. So if you know those funny little shower caps that you get if you stay at a fancy hotel, that are just a piece of elastic around just some plain saran type stuff, just plastic. I put 2 gloves and one of those in the pocket of my raincoat in the Boundary Waters, because undoubtedly it's going to get cold when it rains, and you can whip those out of your pocket, stick your gloves on, stick your rain hat, your like shower cap on your head right away. Your hair doesn't get wet. I have been saved, I can't tell you how many times, and I just have them in my pocket. It costs you nothing for that. The other thing I wanted to show you was this plate. It's a plate. It's also a great cutting board. I've had it forever. I don't know if you can see how scratched up it is, but it also folds up to be a bowl. So it's got I got this at Midwest Mountaineering some time ago. And one of the fold ups doesn't really work as well as I'd like to anymore, but and in the cold weather, it doesn't stay as folded as it does in the warm weather. But the whole thing has 3 little tabs. And so it folds up as a bowl. So it's a cutting board, it's a plate, and it's a bowl all at the same time. And it was super cheap. The other thing is I'm a fan of these Crazy Creek chair type things, you know?
Yes.
Because I put it on the picnic table just flat. If it's wet in the morning, I use it as a chair at night sitting around the fire. I use it in a canoe when I'm canoeing, and I snug it up really tight, and it gives me a lot more force when I'm canoeing. And then the other thing I've used it for is a mat. If it's really gross outside, and I use it as a mat with, you know, the side to the outside. I put that on the downside. And so if it gets gross, it doesn't matter because it just brushes off. I've also used it, you know, if you have a really bad site and it's your tent is on a slant, and I hate sleeping when it's when I'm all slanted. And so I've folded it, this one is a fold, and used it, you know, like this part will be under my thermarest and this part will be at the edge. So it's even more, you know, because as the slant goes downhill, you need a little more on the edge. So I have found that this particular one, which folds, you know, kind of in thirds like that, compared to some of the other ones that are just flat, I found this to be an unbelievable resource in a whole number of situations where it seemed like it was going to be real cumbersome to solve a problem. Cool. So those are my 3 things.
Thanks, Pat.
Does anyone else have anything else? Don't be shy.
This is Tina. I have one which I'm sure a lot of people have already thought of, but you know, on the Rovers website, there's a lot of different camping packing lists, and they're all extremely thorough. There's a backpacking one, canoe camping, car camping, so forth. But what I did is I took and I love Excel spreadsheets. I made my own personalized list, and I did it by category. So for instance, if I'm going to be paddling, and this will be backwards, but say on a trip, if I decide I'm going to bike, I've got the list of everything I would need to bring if I'm going to be biking. If I'm going to paddle, I have the list of everything I would bring for paddling. And what I do is, as I'm packing for any trip that I take now, I take the list and I cross out with an X any categories that I'm not going to be using. So for instance, if my dog is not going camping with me that time, I just cross out that block. If I am going to be using a block of things, then what I do is I take a highlighter and I highlight each of the items as I set it out into my, you know, wherever I'm throwing all my stuff that I'm going to be packing. Or if there's things on the list, for instance, you know, summer camping, I'm not going to need long underwear for sleeping. I would cross that out in advance, like sometime earlier in the week, I would go through my list, put black crosses through all of the items that I don't need. So what I've found is this makes the packing just super efficient. It's resulted in having to like make last minute runs for things a lot less frequently. I don't forget things as much. And I even put things on, like, you know, for instance, if we're going to an extravaganza, I've got potluck item, potluck serving utensil, down to like very, very little minute things, just so that it makes it easy. But kind of my categories, since people can't see, I've got categories for biking, paddling, hiking, a specific winter category, hammocking, dog, campfire, sleeping, food, clothes, food supplies, and personal items, and then miscellaneous. So you can kind of tailor it to your purposes. But I've been showing people this even when I car camp, and they've just said You know, it's just really helpful to have one checklist, because the checklists that you find everywhere on the web or even the Rover site, they're so all inclusive that a lot of the items you don't need, or you need things that aren't on the list. So that's my tip.
Great minds think alike, Tina. I've done that. I've done that too. But you know what also I've discovered is so great. I've got everything checked off, but then I need to take that same list and check it off to make sure I put it in the actual car. Because I've gotten places, it's like, oh great, I checked it off, pull it out of the living room list, but it never made it into the car. So I was like, ugh. But yeah, it makes life go much easier.
Yeah, and then you can even take it another step. Like some of the things on my miscellaneous list, you know, like headlamp, flashlight, earplugs, pocket pack Kleenex, like the things you're always going to be taking that are going to be in your tent at night. I put them in a separate little bag or caddy. So, you know, when I'm getting ready to like go into the tent in the evening, I'm not like rummaging around looking for the earplugs, looking for the little tent light, looking for the Kleenex or whatever else I might need. It's just all in one bag. So, kind of like Fran was talking about what I think with all the separate color coded bags, probably.
You know, I never thought about this as a hack, but I put my earplugs in my sleeping bag stuff sack. So I have my sleeping bag and a stuff sack, and then I put that stuff sack in one of those waterproof sill sacks that, you know, is next to nothing in weight, but it's waterproof, so that I can keep my down bag dry. And I drop my little tiny plastic thing with my earplugs into that sill sack. So it's between the two sacks, but I keep my sleeping bag and a couple of other things in those little sill sacks to make sure that they stay dry.
One of the things that I've done is you know, at various times at the Midwest sales, they have little bitty, like this big little LED lights. And when they've done that for cheap, you know, as part of their coupon deals, I always pick them up, and I have several tents, and in each of my tents, I have one of those attached to the gear loft. And so when I set the tent up, there is a light in the tent. If I wake up during the night and I'm searching for a light, I know that there's a light hanging from the gear loft. And so, so I always get those and put them in my gear loft.
Good idea.
Hang one of those little tiny lights from my ridgeline in my hammock too. You know, sometimes you find them as a little purchase right by the cash register that, you know, they're only an inch big or whatever. And I can read by it so I don't blow out the batteries in my headlamp. And it just lives on my ridgeline, and I can move it out of the way or right over my book or whatever. And they, you know, they cost next to nothing. They're lightweight. And I think they work pretty good.
Little backpacking hint, if fellow backpacker, if you want to, well, you always want to have duct tape handy for, you know, repairs and stuff like that. So what he would do is just take a small pencil and you wrap it around there. So you don't want to carry a big thing of duct tape, right? You just want, so pencil works really good. You get, you know, put a couple of feet on there. And the other thing for repairs I always find is fishing line is very handy. And and of course, the other thing is to have plenty of rope. It probably goes without saying, but that's handy for many things. And I have a timberline tent, and the other thing is make sure you get all the pieces. So it's got a lot of little corner pieces. And I was on one trip and I was in the Boundary Waters, and I realized the corner piece on my tent was missing. So it was duct tape and fish line that got me through it. So it worked quite well, actually. So, anyway, that's my little hint there.
I also just have a quick, this is a tasty car camping quick hack. You know, when you're making s'mores, instead of doing graham crackers and marshmallows and chocolate, you could experiment with doing like Reese's peanut butter cups just with the marshmallows, like smushing in between there, or you can do the fudge stripe cookies. So then you don't have to bring as many pieces, but it's dangerous because then you eat the ingredients.
I actually have a question for you car campers out there. I've been reading online some of the car camping gear lists. So Tina, I'm going to steal your idea, but I see many references to toast. I'm presuming that toast is one of those little wire basket things that you're supposed to make over a fire. Is that how you make toast when you're a car camper?
Yeah, they have a special, you can buy it at REI. They have a special toaster you can get. Also, which is kind of cool for car camping, they have a good popcorn maker too. It's very light, and it's always kind of fun to have popcorn.
Do you need a special
there-
pan for that?
What's that?
Do you need a special, or you're talking about car camping, so it doesn't matter if you have an extra can or pan?
Yeah, it's a special kind of a square pan that works really well. It's got yeah, I'd have to dig it out. I should go dig it out. But yeah, it's a good.
And the other thing for toast is that, just to clarify, it's not a toaster, it's that thing where you put, tell me what it is. Like, is it a wire thing? Is it just simply a wire with some open holes in it? Or what is it you're talking about? Or is it that thing that closes that's iron?
No, it's kind of a grill, and it folds up in like two pieces. You can actually make two pieces of toast. And if you know, like your grandparents or something, they used to, make toast in the old days, before they had plug-in toasters and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It was, I think
Oh,
it's
yeah, like one of those. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's
Okay.
much lighter though. The camping one is much lighter. It's just kind of
And you make that over a fire, right?
yeah, over a fire, yeah, over a campfire, yeah. Works pretty
Yeah,
good.
okay.
Have you ever tried to make it over a stove?
No, I haven't tried that. No, yeah, I'm not sure that would work. Yeah, I think it's more for a campfire. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
I've seen people make it over a stove, a backpacker stove. I've seen them do that.
Okay.
Kind of low flame though. Takes a long time.
Yeah, you'd have to really like your toast.
I have one other thing I wanted to mention, because somebody brought up about that silver coated insulation earlier, and I can't remember her name. I'm so sorry, but this is something that Kaya had this last weekend when we were biking. She had some of that and made a little liner for her cooler on the inside, and she said that it kept her ice for at least twice as long. So, and she said if she would have had it, put a piece right over the top and tucked it in the sides, it probably would have lasted even longer. And we were car camping, but I was pretty impressed at how well
What
that
was
worked.
the material?
You know,
Sorry, what was the material?
It's called
Somebody,
Reflectix.
It's
Say
what?
It's called Reflectix. I've got that too.
Kind of like aluminum bubble wrap.
Yep.
Okay.
Home Depot or Menards
Oh, okay.
or your hardware store might have it.
Okay. That's a nice thing to know about. Just for even for hot days with a cooler. Do you wrap it around the ice or do you put it just over the top? I didn't hear that right.
she lined the inside of her cooler.
So the whole thing, and then, yeah, okay. So then the ice is still loose in there somewhere. You don't have to wrap the ice itself, correct?
No, I probably wouldn't wrap the ice, although it's easier. Yeah, you would just do the ice like you usually do it.
Sure, sure.
I actually make ice in an empty like plastic milk jug,
Yeah.
and just fill it up about 7/8 of the way and freeze it. Or I use other things to make my own blocks of ice.
Yes.
And then
Yeah, I do
bring,
the same thing.
and then
Yeah.
I bring like if I'm bringing something for this car camping stuff again. If I'm bringing something for dinner, like soup, I just make sure that it's frozen. So, and then I eat it within like 3 days, and it's usually great. So it really helps to keep everything cold. But so she had lined the inside of her cooler, including the bottom, and she said she regretted not just putting something on the top and just tucking it in the side so that she had all four sides.
Mm-hmm.
And it used up so little room, and she said she couldn't believe how long the ice lasted. So I'm going to do that next time.
The other thing that makes a good tarp under your tent, if you want under your tent, I have it's vapor barrier that you use for your house, and I have this huge roll of this stuff, and it's
Tyvek, yeah.
I think it's like 3 mils or 5 mils or something. Anyway, but it's just so super light. I mean, compared to like a regular tarp, you know, like if you're car camping, of course you can have any old tarp, but if you're, you know, biking or something, or in the boundary waters, you want to have something light. Works really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. Kind of like the polypro concept where it's really strong and durable and it doesn't hold water. It you know, it dries off immediately. So that's cool.
Okay, any more camping hacks? So going off Tina's idea, what I do is I have a spreadsheet and I have a list for different, like for car camping or backpacking or whatever. And then as I'm packing for the trip, I kind of highlight them on the spreadsheet as I put them in the vehicle. And that's a key thing is like, if you put them in some place, but they're not in the vehicle, you maybe can forget them.
Yep.
But
Yep.
actually, I highlight the different items that are going in, like, say, my travel bag or going in, like, my camping box. And then I highlight the actual box when it's actually in the car. So it doesn't always work out, but I try to do that. And then if there's something I'm just not taking, I just highlight it like I've packed it, but I haven't because I don't need it. Like I don't need my beanie if it's in the middle of summer. But, so I've been working with these lists for a while. So generally, if I work through it meticulously, I don't end up forgetting stuff. But, you know, it doesn't always work out perfectly.
Another thing to go along with the list is, and it took me a while to figure this out, but I've started, you know, during camping season, I just kind of store, and it kind of makes a mess, but it's like in the corner of a room, I have all the stuff that the majority of the time I would take camping. You know, off season, it's all where it belongs, like in the garage or under beds or kind of wherever it fits. But during the prime season, I leave it all sitting kind of in the corner of a room. So I'm not like running around the whole house and garage trying to find all my supplies. They're just kind of there. So if you can tolerate some chaos, it just makes it, I can pack super quick now that way. Like I have my lawn chair, you know, sitting in the guest bedroom and marshmallow sticks and things that don't belong sitting there. So.
Yeah, I've kind of done the same thing when I get back from a camping trip. I take my container with my basic camping stuff and I clean it up and figure out, I repack it right when I come back so it's ready for the next time. And I put a rack up in my garage, so I put a lot of the camping stuff in my garage so it's near to the vehicle I need to put it in. And I put a lot of it up there, so it makes it a lot quicker rather than putting it down in the basement and having to haul it up again. So trying to streamline it a little bit so it's not, doesn't take so many days to organize for a camping trip.
Yeah, I do what you're talking about with, I restock my little toiletry kit right when I get home. So like if I used up my toothpaste or whatever, I restock that before I even unpack so that next time, you know, you're not left without some of those items.
I have something about kayaking. In my garage, I have my kayak on a rack. You know, those two big hooks and kayaks on there. Oops, am I still there?
Yep.
Okay, so on the wall above my kayak is a pegboard. And that's, as soon as I take my kayak paddle out of my car, it goes up on there. And then the PFD goes up there. Everything, my straps that I used to tie my kayak to my car, they're arranged and kind of strung together like a rope. And I hang those all together in the same place. That's all there on this pegboard above my kayak. It makes kayak packing really, really easy because it's right there. And I just take it out of the car. There it goes. Boom. Done. And I always wash my kayak, by the way. Throw that in.
And then you never arrive without your paddle. I don't know if anyone else has had that happen. I'm like, oh, I thought my paddle was in the kayak. And I get there and there's no paddle.
Everything goes in the car first before the kayak goes on the roof.
Yeah, that's a nice tip.
But But
So
since it's
it's
all gathered in one place, it's really easy just to grab it all. It goes in the back seat of the car. I'm done packing.
So here's one that I think has bitten people at times is when you pack away your tent in the basement or wherever, some people don't like to leave the poles that have the elastic wire through them, you know what I mean, that fold up. They don't like to leave them packed with the tent because then the elastic will stretch. So they put it somewhere else. And then they show up for camping and they don't have any of the poles.
Yes.
So I just pack them in with the tent, and it's like, yeah, sooner or later the elastic's going to stretch and it's not going to work anymore. But I don't want to show up without the poles and have to go home and get the poles again. So I don't know what everyone else does, whether you pack the poles separately or put it back with the tent or not.
You know, I have my poles all stretched out separate, but everything is in the same general place. But I mean, you make a good point, Barry, that yeah, it's, you know, if you keep them with the tent, you're less likely to forget them. But I do store mine all extended.
Yeah, I can't remember who showed up for an extravaganza and didn't have their poles.
Oh, no.
I think William O'Brien, I think it was.
Oh, geez. Then it turns into a bivy sack or a hammock.
Yeah.
Do we have a list of infamous acts or something that would have to go at the top of the list?
That'd be good.
I was camping once with a friend, and I don't know if you remember the old umbrella tents. And luckily, it was midnight, and you know, after maybe a few beers or something, and they were setting up the tent. So you get out your Swiss Army knife, and you find some sticks, and you kind of wing it. So it worked. We were fine. I don't.
Funny.
Yeah, maybe we could do another whole show on what's the worst thing you ever forgot.
Yeah, like funniest videos or something. Yeah.
Like a bloopers reel.
So the other thing I often do, I heard someone mention this earlier. If you want to make sure you can have a fire when you go camping, I always bring a lighter because it's more convenient, but I have multiple lighters and I have them in a plastic bag. And I often have matches too in the plastic bag, because if you have one lighter and it gets wet, you may not be able to get a flame off it.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have multiple sources unless you want to figure out how to rub two sticks together, which I cannot do.
Actually, I bring about 6 briquettes of charcoal that's treated so they match light.
Yeah.
And if your firewood's wet, you're still going to have a fire pretty fast because you have the charcoal cheater briquettes.
Or a fire starter if you don't want the chemicals.
Yeah.
And one of the things you can do is you can make your own fire starters with dryer lint, toilet paper roll, and some wax.
Oh, yes.
And you can make your own fire
Say
starter.
that again, you got broke up.
Dryer
Say that
lint.
again, you broke up.
Dryer lint.
Yeah.
A toilet paper roll.
Yeah.
And then drip wax in it.
Mm-hmm.
And these make, and you can cut them into pieces, and they make great fire starters. Or you can use hand sanitizer.
Oh. Will
help make things burn, which we all have these days, right?
Yeah.
And I take camping anyway, even before the pandemic, of course. Another thing that works is if you have corn chips, they will burn for 5 to 10 minutes because of the oil on them.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
They can work as fire starters.
Wow.
I typically also have multiple lighters. I have lighters and matches in my with my stove in my cook stuff. And then I typically have something, I call it a ditch bag, and it's basically emergency stuff if all else fails, and there's always a lighter there. So I typically locate them in multiple places. Of course, I'm in a kayak, and so these are multiple different dry bags to head off any kind of systems failure. So yeah, I'm kind of with you guys about multiple ways to be able to light a fire, or to be able to even just light your stove.
Yeah, the waterproof matches are good. And the other thing is, of course, when you're camping, the pine needles just take off, and the pine cones, like nuts. They're a good starter.
Or birch bark.
Birch
birch
bark,
bark,
yeah,
yes,
birch
excellent,
bark.
yeah, excellent,
With
yeah.
birch bark, you can light a fire in the rain. That's good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I was really nervous. I see that it hasn't rained and we could have met in the park, but I was nervous about this. I was nervous that people wouldn't bring hacks, and I probably should just have trusted Rovers, because I'm pretty blown away by the number of suggestions and ideas and things that people have brought up. So
Yeah, I
thanks to
agree.
all of you.